All right, hello, welcome to this video. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness and the highest levels of love light. I just did a live with my lovely sister, Candace, and friend. And I have been a little offline. I mean, I've been doing videos in my car and such, but been definitely in much more of a hermit mode the last week. But I wanted to pop on here and do a little light language and a little sharing. So if you guys are interested in that video, you can check out Candace Ko on Facebook. We did a live. I think it'll still be available. I'm not sure how that works. Today, which is Sunday fun day. So there's a lot of things that I could go into, a lot of different places. And then I'll go into some light language and some flow. I'm actually being guided just to go into flow, so I will, and then maybe at the end talk a little bit about the energies. Some of this is meant to be felt, not necessarily understood on a linear basis. Kua no wa ten kuahaya nesta o kunawa. Kinawa he te aho no kune dinini no kwawa. No te no kwawana. And what is it that we are embarrassed about? What is it that we are afraid to express? Where is it that we have self-doubt? In our own abilities, in our own capabilities, in our abilities to I'm hearing be the caped crusader, like recognizing our own inner abilities. For many of the sounds that we make are not sounds that you might hear on a daily basis, so to speak. You may not speak sounds that others may resonate with. Yet we are being encouraged to express from our own box, so to speak, from our own bubble. For from our own sound box comes our own set of codes, our own set of vocals and harmonics that allow us to call up, to call forth, to make the call, if you will, to allow ourselves to make the call. I'm hearing ET phone home, and I'm also seeing there's no place like home. For when we use our own column, if you will, our own calling system, our own calling card, we effectively change the rate of speed in which we negotiate, so to speak. Play on words. We allow ourselves to travel through the spectrum of light harmonic exchange and encodements that allows ourselves to extrapolate, to extract from our environment that which is resounding back to us. So I'm seeing this as in reference to like a sonar, right? We send out those bubbles like dolphins or whales. They use their sound to communicate with their environment, right? So essentially what we're doing when we use our vocals and our sound to communicate with our environment, we're communicating with our bodies. We're also communicating with our environment, what it is around us, our space, Mother Nature, one another. But what I'm hearing is we can do this comfortably from the space of our own home. We can do it in our backyard. We can do it in our house. It changes, and then it helps us to attune to the higher frequencies that are coming in with, and I'm hearing the full moon. So something about the timing of what's going on is very relevant. The tide, the incoming tides. It helps us to stabilize the currents within our own tuning fork, within our own reality. And then we can see what's up ahead as a fork in a road that we then tune into. That allows us to create from a space of, I'm hearing, I have no fear and only love. And if I was a child. So some of the songs that we hear that activate us, like that song was highly activating for me when I was first recognizing that the universe was talking with me through all things. And we're being invited to really play with that. And I talked about this in my previous video. Talked about this with Candace. She talked about this on her video. And it's something I think many of us are starting to finally get or to recognize that we don't have to get it. All we have to do is play ball, play with the bubbles. And then as we do this, it changes our entire atmosphere. So I'm going to play with this a little bit. I dreamed that my guide in this dream, my fellow star brother who looks like a kachina, a Hopi, or us, I always mispronounce it. Anusazi, Anhasuzi. There's two different ones and they're different, but it's Anusuhazi. Anyways, you could, they're in this kachina doll is represented off of these spirit beings that are our helpers and our guides, and they work between dimensions, and they are essentially us also. And they were showing me that we were blowing bubbles. And I always talk about bubbles. That's always been, when I first went through this massive shift, I was talking about bubbles with a client. I dreamed about bubble gum. My friend Alyssa, who got me, I think, started in my interest in energy healing, because she's a very powerful healer, was telling me I have all this bubble gum. And so for me, it was all about fascia, changing shape. It's about us speaking and blowing these bubbles out. It's a ripple effect that we're having. And what this kachina, I'm calling this being that for lack of better names, said is we're changing the atmosphere. We were changing the atmosphere on Mars. And he wanted to go make sure that this was being done properly. And I recognized that this meaning was on so many different levels, because we literally are changing the atmosphere by us blowing bubbles, by us playing, by us creating in this space, by us essentially being in this harmonic exchange and interchanging ability. And essentially these bubbles hold information. So I'm going to go into this a little bit. There's something called eDNA. And essentially I think it's eDNA. It's DNA that they find in the air. And I'm not going to go into what this means on such a massive scale. But it reminds me of the fact that DNA is in everything. It is everywhere. It is every air. It is in all of the particles, because what is DNA really, right? And I'm not talking about what it is according to what we know as scientists or doctors or whatever it is, chemical engineers. I'm saying, what is it really? Because there is a quantum field where DNA is in everything. Therefore, it is in the air. And scientists found that they were working with, I think it was a mole, right? A mole, which is ironic. Moly, 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 moly. I'm going to have to do this live with a couple of my sisters. Whoop, the floor just dropped out. And they found human DNA mixed in with animal DNA because the humans had been interacting with the science with the animals. So of course, hair follicles, and we're blowing out DNA bubbles all the time. So in theory, if this is true, this would mean that we're constantly interacting with each other's DNA and interacting with all of the DNA that makes up all things. Because essentially it's just a quantum space. And I'm just playing from my perspective, based on my dream and based on synchronicities that have come up for me. So in this field that we are part of, that we are co-creating with, we are essentially having a ripple effect on all of the DNA that is in our field. So from one perspective, that is why it is so important to be light-hearted, to play, because this changes the shape and the structure of our reality. Because we are blowing the bubbles, we are blowing the sound harmonics, we are blowing the intention into our space and into our field. And in this, we are exchanging information at a quantum level all the time. So this is just one layer, and it's just fun to think about, chew on, right? It's fun to chew on that. And as we blow our bubbles in this mix, as we become the mixologists, as we recognize and hold our intentional focus and awareness on what subjects that we are creating. Are we creating from these, creating into these objectively or subjectively? Are we allowing ourselves to be the subject, to be subjected to, or are we allowing ourselves to eject from this I'm hearing mainframe source field that is essentially in the mix of being digested. So it's essentially like some of us are hitting that eject button and saying, I'm out. I don't play with that anymore. That isn't where I wish to stay in my reality. And that's okay, because we're then creating from a different field or from a different variation of source codes. And source codes, it's not like, from my perspective, it's infinite. The structure is infinite. What we have available to us to play with is infinite. So why are we creating in a place of infinite, I'm hearing finite, fear-based modalities and practices, when we have essentially burst that bubble so that it can be resourced, acknowledged, integrated, digested, so on and so forth. Ninia oa uaki ninia oa wa hea nia oe oni tia nia no nia ia ui stia kune ninia we ao ko ate. And how we communicate with one another is becoming our own sense of resourcefulness. We are being invited to communicate and collaborate and co-create in a resourceful, fun, expressive way. I'm seeing a merge of, the word of the week. Merge is the word. I'm seeing this, like, why not open it up? Scientists, I'm seeing English professors playing with scientists, playing with mathematicians, which of course scientists are both, but it's like, stop having these focalized, it's like an intention to stay in focus, but not be tunnel visioned about it. So expanding our focus to be broader, a broader spectrum, and see how everything is interconnected. Many are struggling with letting go of the old, I'm hearing carry on. All right, so carry on is dead energy. It's, I'm hearing this body has no life. The carry on, like the vultures pick at carry on, right? But this is a play on words. Like, and this is even like a reference to my own reality. Like, what are you going to carry on, Carrie? What are you going to create? What are you carrying on your back? What are you carrying on about? Right? What are you talking about? What are you taking with you? What are you carrying on your back? What are you carrying in your vessel? What are you carrying in your codex or your Rolodex, right? Are you creating the same roles? And Candace and I talked about this she said the movie reels. Yeah. What are we choosing to put into our reel, our reality? And all of that is being invited to be re-diagnosed, is what I'm hearing. So we might have been given a certain prognosis or diagnosis, but what I'm hearing is it's diagnosis, it's dying office, it's dying phosphorus. It's so much. It's cellular mitosis. It's shedding of the old skin. I could go into so many different places here. So this old diagnosis is still sitting with a lot of people, and they still think that they have to follow that. Well, I was told by my doctor, this is what's going on. Therefore, I'm building my whole reality based on that one diagnosis. But now, more and more people might end up going back to that same doctor, or a completely different set is what I'm being guided to play with. Ooh. A different set of doctors to play with the new energies who might say, that was never your problem. There never was a problem. Or, guess what? You solved that problem. And therefore, that diagnosis is no longer valid. Or it was misdiagnosed. Or it was a problem, but now it's been treated. Therefore, quit running back to treat the same problem, because then this creates the same problem. So it's all a big play on words. I'm hearing it's a treatise, right? Doctrines. What doctrinations are we continuing to indoctrinate into? What doctrines have tried to dock into our own system? And I'm hearing again, I wrote about this in my blog, System of a Down. Are we still plugging into the system of a down? Or are we allowing ourselves to eject, unplug, release the dockage? So much play on word here. So this has something to do with our DNA as well. I'm hearing it has to do with certain subsets that we are subjecting ourselves to. So there's a lot of chatter going on all around us. And this chatter has to do with what other people have decided to believe in. And I'm being guided to repeat that. This chatter has to do with what other people have decided to believe in. And therefore, they are creating their own. And there's an essence of needing to control the narrative because it's not able, a lot of people don't have this, don't feel that they have the same control over reality that they once had because they're not aware that it's become very fluid. And so they're trying to hold on and to grasp. And this isn't for everybody. This is just for one particular group of people, and they're trying to control everybody else's reality based on what they think or feel they want to propagate that is correct or right. And it's not necessarily coming from a place of fear, although a lot of it is. Sometimes these beautiful people think they're doing the right thing, and they want to send that out and do what they feel they need to do in order to coerce someone else to believe in their story. Because what their story is based upon is their reality. But I'm recognizing so much that not all of our stories line up. They just don't. And I know from my perspective, my story does not line up with the mainstream story at all, in any way, shape, or form. Yet we are, as my friend Candace was saying, walking between these worlds. And it's challenging sometimes to have one foot in this world and one foot in the other. But what I'm being shown is even that is starting to fade. Because we're aware of other realities, but we're even becoming more aware of our own ability to unplug from that particular spectrum. So staying out of fear, or it can go on both ends. And I'm just going to dip into this and then I'm going to come back into flow. And I am in still flow, but I'll get back into the wordplay in just a minute. But what I'm being shown is some people are in fear, so they want to control the narrative, and they want to control their family, and they want to control their friends because they're afraid that, and then other people feel like they're doing that because they're coming from their hearts. And then there's those of us that are reacting to that, and it triggers us, and it puts us in fear. Maybe they're right. Maybe I should be doing this. Maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Whatever the story is, whatever the narrative is that's being brought to our awareness. Or we get triggered and we say, because we want to control the narrative and we don't like other people thinking that they can control our reality. And so we get triggered then to say, you have no power over me. But we don't need to have those conversations from one perspective. From some perspectives, we do have to have those conversations. It is important to be able to talk about this, and that is true. It is important to be able to have this narrative and be able to have a human conversation and not feel like it cannot be spoken. That's a whole other ball of wax. What I'm referring to is more of the energy behind it. So if I'm triggered because someone is dictating to me what they feel my reality should look like, I then have to look at it, am I in fear over them controlling my reality? Because if I'm not in fear, their opinion has no power over me. Therefore, if their opinion holds power over me, that's on me, if that makes sense from my perspective. So it's a very interesting time for many of us in all spectrums. And we're all being given opportunities to see, to feel into all of this. And so as we use our voice, as we use our harmonics to tune into, we will be less likely to speak from a place of fear, for we have already cleared that fear out of our pipes, so to speak. We've allowed our pipes to cleanse and release old tunage, if you will. I'm hearing wattage, tunage. Like I'm hearing wadded up remnants of energy that's been swallowed, essentially. This is all an energetic analogy, right? We bite our tongue, we swallow our words, we're wearing covering up. So some of us aren't able to speak people are walking on eggshells because they don't want to offend someone else's ego, is essentially what's going on. They don't want to offend someone else's self-worth. But no one can offend our self-worth unless we give them the power to do that. Or we say, that person has offended us. Who is us? Who are we? I'm seeing Zoolander. Who am I? Merman. Anyways, squirrel. So it's kind of like, who is it that's getting offended right now? And why do I feel the need to hold on to that version of myself? Is that who I really am? Am I fill in the blanks? Is that my only personification, right? And I could go into so much flow off of personification. Who is it that we are giving value to, that we believe in, that is who we are, that we are essentially building up? So we're really being invited to shake it loose, right? Just shake it off and be in that space of flow, because when we're feeling really offended by something, especially someone else's opinion of us, I'm hearing opting into a belief, pinning us down on something. When we're really offended by that, who is it that's feeling that? Who does that belong to? Does that belong to me? Do I want to own that feeling of anger or lack of self-worth or feeling out of control or whatever it is that triggered that feeling? We're being invited to kind of look at that. And I like to share, like my friend Kat, she'll say, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? And so at times, what my guides are basically saying is, when we do the practice of meditation, movement, sound, our vocal cords, FOXP2 genes, were camouflaged. A fox represents stealth and camouflage, as well as being able to stay behind the scenes. So our FOXP2 genes, from one perspective, have been activated. And what's happening is they've been dormant or been used as a doormat. They've been stamped out, right? Time stamp approval, right? Now is the time. But many have failed, is the wrong word. I'm hearing flailed, failed, play with that. They haven't unlocked the heart enough. They don't feel like they can truly be who they are. So then they are triggered by what it is that they are not, if that makes sense. I do it. We've all been there. I still have moments. I mean, daily, I'm like, oh boy, that just, wow, okay. Reset. Where did that come from? Why am I angry? Why am I feeling whatever that feeling is that I don't want to own? But wow, I'm feeling it. Therefore, I'm owning it. But I don't have to hang on to it. I don't have to continue to own it and have it become a shackle. I can clear it, dissolve it, integrate it, digest it. Or I can deflect it and recognize that that isn't me, that's that person's projection, right? There's so many different ways to play with this. And I'm hearing people are projecting to protect. So a lot of people are feeling that sense of, I can't anchor, I can't ground, there's nothing to believe in, I don't have control over my life, therefore I'm going to project in order to protect myself so that I'm not hurt. Because this is fear, I'm afraid. And that's something to recognize I'm being shown. And that FOXP2 gene, and this is all my own perspective from my own synchronistic journey, obviously. It's just what I've read and what I've found and what I've been writing in automatic writing and flow, is that that has opened. And there's many who aren't used to using their words. So instead, they're using their words in a form of self-expression that hasn't yet made its connection with neutrality, and compassion, because those vocal cords were boxed in, is what I'm hearing, for so long. And now they're just being overly asserted, is what I'm hearing. There's this over assertion, and that'll balance out. We're in that process of finding that balance and that neutrality. But what I'm being shown is sometimes it's about doing the work, so that we don't just burst out and say things that we then realize isn't really what we were trying to express. And we've all been there, right? I'm not going to speak for everybody else, but I've done it. So this gene has been activated, and part of what we are being invited to do is use our ways. Yoga talks about, any of the yoga texts, mantras and affirmations and humming and whistling and moving that energy through actually vibrates our body and tunes our body in such a way that we can then release a lot of the stagnation that we've been holding here. And this just helps keep the whole column in flow. And letting go of the need to judge what we sound like. And I might run out of room here, so if I run out of room, I'll do a second video. I'm kind of at my limit. Letting go of our need to understand where it's coming from or why it's coming out. Let it go. Because when we then release it, I'm talking about by ourselves in an office or outside with nature, or these sounds will come through. Could just be, we then move the energy in such a way that it allows flow. We don't have to always know why. Although sometimes we will get those answers as to why. Sometimes that answer might come the next day, or a week later, or a month later, or a year later, when we are open enough to receive, or just recognizing that it doesn't have to be answered right now, is all I'm saying. And I'm being shown that this is relevant for a lot of people in general. We don't have to know why everything is happening the way it is right now on the world stage, or in our friends' lives, or at work. Part of what we're being really invited to do is just to let go and not have to know. And it comes all back to be still and know. Be still and know that it's all working out as it should, could, will. Like, there's so many ways to play with it, because when we're in that space of harmony and coherence, things do have a way of working themselves out, as we all have been there. It's like, wow, everything's just in flow today. And all of a sudden, all of that noise is no longer a distraction, because we are tuning it out, not ignoring it. We're creating a higher tune in which we are attuning to our heart strings, our string quartet, right? Our ability to connect into the higher frequencies. And this allows us to